Good. I almost forgot to hit the record button for Roger. Now we're in good shape, and we're in probably good graces with Roger as
I
well.
think we're both about half asleep this morning from being out so late
I
last
think
night,
so
but
too. It was a long day yesterday, but I had a fantastic time.
I did too.
I want to thank both the town of Andrews and the town of Murphy for having me there to be a part of their festivities, and
Right.
I got to use my voice a lot yesterday.
I didn't do much yesterday. I came out and worked last night and was out after midnight last night, but trying to help the troops work on traffic and get calls answered and all those kind of things that was going on with fireworks. It was actually pretty docile last night. It got a little bit busy after the fireworks, as we can imagine. But
Docile. That's a word I don't hear on radio very much.
hey, I've got all kind of words you never
Docile.
heard before. I may make up a few.
It was a very docile Independence Day.
So yeah, with lack of sleep, I may come up with all kind of stuff.
This
You
should be
never
one
know.
of the most interesting shows we've ever had. Who knows?
Might meet the snake show, might it?
I know, right?
But as I was saying, after the fireworks, things did pick up a little bit and got kind of busy after that. But I'd went down to Murphy and was helping with Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
And as the fireworks started, I sent my wife a message, and she was at home with her mother. Of course, her mother's got Alzheimer's, and somebody had to stay with her all the time. So she was there with her, and I sent her a message, and I said, "It's eerily quiet for a 4th of July."
Eerily. Quiet.
Eerily.
It's kind of like Lake Erie, but different.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right.
For a 4th of July. And it was. We didn't have a whole lot going on last night. And like I say, it picked up. Call volume picked up after the fireworks. Of course, people were leaving and going home. And, of course, when you have that many vehicles trying to leave Murphy and Andrews, you've always got road rage incidents and that kind of thing. People upset because they're not moving fast enough. And
People are
that
impatient.
kind of
aren't
stuff. They really are. But halfway through the fireworks at Murphy, I was there stationed at Bulldog Intersection, and halfway through the fireworks, our officers was going to different places, answering calls, and we got a break and enter in progress call in Andrews, so we started to it. I left Murphy and started toward Andrews to back that officer up. And before I could get there, I realized that there was not a break and enter in progress. It was neighbor thought they saw something they didn't see, and the house had not been broken into and that kind of thing. So I was about halfway to Andrews. So I thought I'll just go on to Andrews, and so I finished the second half of the fireworks at Andrews. So I got the first half in Murphy and the second half in Andrews, and helped out up there and answer calls there in Andrews once that got cleared up. But I'm like you. I appreciate our towns. And I appreciate what they do, for trying to hold these festivities for the public. And
It's a lot of organization to put all these things together. So, yeah, thank you so much for our towns. And we had all the neighboring towns doing the same thing, but I couldn't get to all of them.
Right.
But, so thanks to all the hard work that goes into these festivities.
And I know about all the Murphy Police Department was out last night trying to help with the traffic there, in Murphy. Andrews, I didn't get to speak to any of the Andrews guys while I was there. But, for those that may not know, they do have a new chief there in Andrews. And so they're getting back under their feet, making some changes up there and trying to get some more officers. So hopefully we'll get that back going before too long in Andrews and have some more help up there. But we had a lot of our people out, not everybody, but we had most of our people out last night. We had investigators out, different people trying to help with Andrews and help with Murphy. And it took everybody to try to get the traffic flowing and all those kind of things. And for those that's listening that was complaining about the traffic and how slow everything was going last night, there's only so many directions and so many ways you can divert traffic in Murphy and Andrews.
Right.
So, and when you have a lot of people leaving at one time, it just causes congestion you can't do anything about. So that's the price you pay for coming out and being a part in the festivities.
And to celebrate our freedom. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah.
But one thing I was thinking last night, I don't understand though.
What's that?
I don't understand why people get there like extremely early to get the best spots, to get front row, and then halfway through the fireworks leave and don't even stay to watch all of them.
I'm going to scratch my head on
Because
that
they're
one.
trying to beat the traffic out. Well, if you're trying to beat the traffic out, why do you get there early and try to get the best spots to and see, but you don't stay to watch it?
Right.
Little food for thought there. I just never understood that.
So, I hate that I missed Murphy's fireworks show last night. I was in Andrews with their fireworks show, and they had a fantastic show last night. I know they have quite an investment into these fireworks, and I know Andrews was pretty crowded last night, and folks just enjoying that show. And but I'm sure Murphy's was spectacular as well. But maybe I'll find a video online I can watch that too.
Right. There you go.
And folks, I know from a radio station point, we do try to warn people the week of 4th of July to make sure to take care of your pets on fireworks nights, especially. Usually for the whole week, because people are still going to be setting off fireworks tonight and tomorrow night, and they started earlier in the week because dogs and cats, they don't like fireworks very well. And usually July 5th is our heaviest hashtag missing pets day on our Facebook page because all these dogs have been frightened by fireworks. So you may want to consider that for the rest of the week until people finish shooting off their fireworks, just to make sure that your pets at nighttime, when it gets dark especially, that they have a safe place. You even may want to distract them with some music so they don't hear it. Just turn up WKRK and shameless plug there.
I know I've got 2 German Shepherds. I know one of my German Shepherds, the big one. I don't even know how much he weighs, but he'll when he stands on his hind feet, he can put both feet on my shoulders, and
wow,
he's a big dog.
Big dog.
But when it comes to thunderstorms and things like that,
big baby.
He wants in the house. He don't want to be outside.
Big baby, yeah. If you do have missing pets from the fireworks, go to WKRK's Facebook page and just post them there, and I'll eventually get to them and share them so that other folks, and there's a lot of folks that quickly find their pets just by going through our Facebook page. It's nice to see those reunions.
Right. Yeah, and like I say, I know there'll be a lot of people missing their pets, and we're in the process now of trying to put together, as we've talked about before, animal control officer, thing of that nature, so we can kind of address some of the pet issues and things in the county, and there'll be some things we can do, some we can't do. Mention that I wasn't intending on talking about animal control today, but one thing I do want to mention on that, I knew the last time we did the show, somebody had asked about ordinances in Stephanie County, and there's still ordinances on the website, and what's the situation with that. I've talked with the county manager extensively about that and the commission board. What basically, in a nutshell, the animal control ordinances there is about 90 to 95% mimics what general statute already says.
And that's for the state.
Yeah, that's what the state regulations and guidelines. So most of that ordinance is already in the general statute book that we follow. So 90 to 95% of that we're going to follow anyway through general statutes. There's a few things in that ordinance that's in addition to the general statutes that we have tried charging before. One of the things that falls under the noise ordinance and in the animal ordinance, but with the noise ordinance that talks about barking dogs and nuisance dogs and things of that nature. A lot of those ordinance things we've tried to charge, and a lot of the things from the noise ordinance that we've tried to charge as far as barking dogs do not make it through the court system. We have tried charging those things several times in the past. There has never made it through the court system. It's ambiguous the way they're written. Kind of can be challenged very easily the way it's written. And basically the district attorney's office years ago, not this particular district attorney's office, but the one previous to this, basically instructed all law enforcement officers not to enforce that part of that ordinance because it was unenforceable. And there was nothing they can do as far as convicting it and charging people with it. So we've went back to the county manager. We went back to the commission board. We've addressed these things. I've asked for these things to be fixed in the ordinance as we have a new animal control officer coming up to at least look at it, see what can be changed in it. And hopefully we might get some results back from that later. Someone posted on there about they're still on the county website, and those ordinances are listed on the website. I've made the recommendation. I can't do anything about it, but I've made the recommendation of if they're unenforceable, not to have them on the website to take them down. But
so my question is, if we're following general statute for the state, what is incomplete about that we need to do a local?
Well, what
ordinance?
general statute deals with through the statewide is basically dangerous dogs, dangerous animals. And there are other animal statutes that involves things such as fowl, that involves cattle, involves horses, things of that nature as far as abuse and neglect. So basically what the general statute deals with is abuse and neglect and dangerous animals is basically what it deals with. The other things that ordinances cover is things like nuisance type stuff. And so what the general statute does is leave that up to the counties, each individual jurisdiction, to decide what they want guidelines in the way of their nuisance issues. And so that's one of the things that Cherokee County had tried to address in years past, and for a while that kind of worked. But as defense attorneys started challenging things and started coming on the scene, we found pretty quickly that those ordinances do not stand up to the court scrutiny. And so we're looking at having those things re-looked at and rewritten. One of the things that I've also suggest, with the county manager, with the county attorney, and with the county board, is the fact of that we're not the first person that's tried to do this. So let's look at some other jurisdictions around the state that have ordinances that address these issues. Look at them, see what we want for Cherokee County, what we think would work, what wouldn't work, and just because another county has an ordinance doesn't mean you have to follow it exactly the way it's written. If there's things in it you don't like or don't agree with, don't put that in your Cherokee County ordinance. But look at other counties who have written ordinances that work, and see if we could ride on the backs of someone else as far as things that's already been tested.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. If something, and if you have an ordinance that's non-enforceable, it's just a waste of ink and paper.
It is, and it's very frustrating for us. It's very frustrating for the public because, we want to help the public. We want to do what we can to help them, and then when we show up and we tell the public, we can't charge for this barking dog, or we can't do this or that. A lot of times they're pulling these ordinances off the website saying, but the ordinance says this, and trying to get them to understand that the ordinance may say that, but the district attorney's office is not going to prosecute that. And it is a complete waste of time, energy, and effort to charge things that the district attorney's office is not going to prosecute. So it's a cycle that we need to break and we need to fix in some manner. And hopefully as the next few months progress and we get animal control off the ground and get it running, we can take these steps one at a time and start addressing some of these issues as we start getting feedback from the public. So just because July 1st there's going to be a animal control officer doesn't mean that these are all going to be fixed right off the bat, but we are definitely in a starting place to start working on some of these issues.
Has an animal control officer been named already?
Has not. We've not talked about that, or we've actually talked about it within the office, but we've not made those decisions yet. One of the things that kind of threw a kink in our plans was we had some ideas about the way we was going to move things around to accommodate this. But we have found out with the new chief in Andrews and with the board up there and the situation that they're in, I found out today they're in a situation where they're increasing pay and increasing benefits in Andrews, which is substantially more than Cherokee County. And so we anticipate possibly people leaving to go to Andrews. And so that's something that's through a kink in it. Murphy Police Department's working on their pay issues. They're already above us on pay, and if they work on these things and the rumors that I'm hearing comes to pass, they're going to be substantially above what we can pay in Cherokee County. So that's going to cause officers to leave. And so that's going to put us, we're just now full again. Every time we get full, these things happen. We lose people again. And so that's something we didn't anticipate happening. And you can rest assured if Murphy and Andrews increases their pay and we try to do something to adjust ours, Cherokee Tribal is going to increase their pay. It's just a never-ending cycle that kind of goes around and around. And
on last week's show, we addressed the situation that a lot of people use us as a training ground to go to higher-paying jobs, and we're kind of footing the bill for all that training and just getting someone in the position, and that's not cheap.
Well, we've hired people at the sheriff's office that we know that are not going to stay forever. We've got a couple of people that has got degrees. That has got a great future ahead of them in criminology and bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, that we know that they're ultimately wanting to go work for the FBI or work somewhere else, but they're wanting to get experience and training. They're wanting to do the ground work as far as running blue lights and siren, arresting people, answering calls, things of that nature, get work experience for these federal jobs and other high-paying jobs. And they're people that we know eventually at some point in time are probably going to leave, and so we can enjoy the benefit of having those people at this time. But then when you throw pay issues and things like that on top of it, then you know that you're in a pretty dire situation. Right. And it's just from what I understand, Graham County is up their pay for deputy sheriffs has went above our starting pay. We got 3 times the people or more than Graham County has. I think they have a total of like 9,000 population. We have about 30,000 in Cherokee County. We house their prisoners for them most of the times, things of that nature. And so their commitments come to Cherokee County through our hospital. If they don't go to Swain, they come to here. And so we're having to create a lot of the work coming out of these, or deal with a lot of the work coming out of these other counties. But yet they're increasing their pay and paying more than our officers. And
it's one of those things you can't really blame an employee for wanting to better themselves and their family with more pay too, especially when you're getting more pay for less stress and less workload. Right. And that happens in some of our neighboring counties, and that makes it attractive for them to move there.
When you look at Graham County, that probably has, I don't know what their latest numbers are, but I know the last time I checked, they had about 10 to 12,000 calls a year for service. Last year in Cherokee County, we had, I think it was 47,000, 48,000 last year in Cherokee County. So when you have officers, that are looking at that, just the stress and just the report writing and answering calls and going to court and all those kind of things, when they look at a neighboring county like that and says, hey, I can go over there and have a third of the calls and a third of the stress and a third of the court appearances and all those things I need to do, but yet make more money, I don't blame the officers at all for leaving and going to other places or police departments or wherever it may be.
Stress has a price tag.
It does. It really does. And so, it's just something we have to work on and we have to deal with. But it goes back to what I said before. Certified officers become marketable. And they become marketable when you have a shortage. And anytime you have people, offices and departments and agencies are increasing pay to try to attract people, that takes away from others, and the others have to figure out what they're going to do to make themselves attractive. And
it's not an easy formula to figure out, because I know the commissioners, they want to keep our taxes as low as possible by keeping the pay.
Well, one of the things we discussed in Cherokee County, just giving you an example, was a situation with the landfill. We can point fingers, make blame, whatever we want to about the price tag that came with whatever mistakes that was made there in previous administrations. But the fact of the matter is Cherokee County got hit with over $1 million sinking into a landfill that they didn't expect to do, And so one of the things I talked to the county manager this morning was the fact of that, I understand that when you come to pay issues and increasing pay and all that, there's money we need that may not be there. They may not have the money to give us what we need. But as a county, we're going to have to figure out how to come up with that money and how to be competitive, because we're just getting further and further behind as the days and the weeks and the months go. And the further behind we get, the harder it is to catch up. And so, God love them. I don't want to be a commissioner. I'd hate to face what commissioners are facing with financial issues and going on.
It's not an easy job.
But the fact of the matter is, all across this county, we're getting further and further behind. And it's not just the sheriff's office, but it's other employees in the county and other things that are getting behind in comparison to other counties around us. And so we're going to have to do something to come up with a solution and a remedy for that. And I'm like I say, I'm not here to try to tell the commissioners what to do or how to be a commissioner, because I'm not one and have no desire to be one. But we have to figure out, in Cherokee County, how we're going to raise revenue, how we're going to get income coming into the county, and how we're going to pay our employees to be comparable with the rest of the state. And it's just something we have to do.
And I as a business owner, I appreciate the positions the commissioners are in right now, because there's so many things that I want to buy and services to provide here at the radio station. But if there's not money to do that, I just can't do that.
Right.
So you have to work with the amount of they have a certain amount of money that they have to work
within a budget.
With.
I mean that's just the fact of the matter.
There's so many services people want.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're a county government. It doesn't matter if you're running a household. You've got a budget. You got a flow of income that you have to work within, and you may want all you want to, but you have to stay within that flow of budget, and I totally understand that, but it doesn't change the fact that we're losing people and will lose people with these changes that are going on around us.
I was always raised with the phrase, you have to live within your means.
Right.
So if you can increase your means, then you can live better,
Right.
I guess, right?
That's exactly right. But how do you increase those means?
I know. That's a good question.
Yeah. And I've heard Commissioner Eichenbaum say this before, and it's true. I don't disagree with what he's saying. But county government in general, whether it's county, state, or federal, their income flows and the things that they have within the county comes from the people. It comes from taxpayers. It comes from people, from other people's earned money that keeps government flowing. So, it's hard. It's hard to go back and say, you need more of this or more of that. But it's just a situation we're in, and we have no choice.
How do we increase means without putting that bill on the taxpayers?
Right.
That's the big question. And attracting big industry, that is a huge boom.
It is.
Because that gives us so much more tax dollars. So if we just can continue attracting new business and just making ourselves look marketable to these businesses, that's a big
Right.
thing to bring them here. That's providing great services. Like I know a lot of them want like the natural gas and broadband, things like that,
Right.
that we can just work on ourselves to bring those
Yeah.
businesses here. I know a lot of that's already in the works.
Yeah, and like I say, once we can get things like that accomplished and done, I think you'll see more business come to the area. We have a tremendous flow of people in Cherokee County. With the new casino that came up and with just our geographical location of people passing through, we have a tremendous amount of people visiting our county and flowing through our county. And it's just how do we capitalize on that? How do we attract that business? How do we attract those things for our county? So I'm hoping that that we can get something done quickly in the future before we lose too many people, or more people, I should say. And like I've talked about too, it's not just the sheriff's office, but it's other county agencies you
Right.
see that runs this constant battle of losing people, to other agencies. And we just have to figure it out, whether we're going to do it one office at a time, one department at a time, whether we're going to do it across the board for everybody. How are we going to do that? And but we got to have some kind of plan within the county to help our people. And so hopefully that'll get accomplished before too long.
All right.
Yeah.
You get to work in Raleigh quite a bit too,
I
don't
do.
you? With legislation and
Yeah, I'm on the
things like that.
legislative committee for the Sheriff's Association.
So what exactly does that entail?
Well, basically what it is on the legislative committee, we don't make or pass laws. Of course, that's left up to the congressmen and senators to do that. But basically what we do is we look at laws that are being introduced into the state, and we evaluate those laws about how it affects law enforcement, in particular the sheriff's office, but law enforcement in general, and about things that we feel are good for our state or bad for our state. And so we take different stances on that, whether we agree with legislation, whether we oppose legislation, whether we oppose it with low priority or high priority, or we're neutral on something. But when you take the 100 sheriffs in the state and their constituents that come with those sheriffs, our voice is pretty strong in Raleigh as far as what we support or don't support and those kind of things. And so when the Sheriff's Association and the Legislative Committee comes out and says we either support something or oppose something, it may not make law or whatever. They may do what they want to anyway, but it certainly makes people stand up and take notice, about what the sheriffs across the state feel about things. And one of the things, we had a conference call this morning with several sheriffs across the state, and one of the things that we talked about on that conference call was the fact of that when we look at these bills and we try to determine what's good or bad for the state, or what's good or bad for law enforcement and sheriff's offices in particular, it's not about white sheriffs or black sheriffs. It's not about Republican, Democrat. It's not about any of these political aspects that come with that, but it's about looking at things from a law enforcement and a sheriff's office standpoint, and what we think are good or bad for law enforcement, good and bad for our citizens. And one of the things we talked about this morning, we had an emergency conference call about House Bill 511. So anybody that's not familiar with House Bill 511, I'll tell you about it in just a second, but let me back up just a minute. There was, from my understanding, there was a bill that was introduced that we really didn't discuss or talk about a whole lot in the Sheriff's Association that had to do with resentencing drug offenders and resentencing drug traffickers in particular. But that bill was a House bill that got shot down in the House that never made it to the crossover. It never made it to the Senate. And so we didn't discuss it because it looked like it was dead. It was a dead bill. There was no need of discussing it, kind of thing. We was notified by our attorney from a sheriff's association, legislative committee, and some particular sheriffs around the state that had senators that was involved in this. I was on a conference call this morning, and we were informed that 4 days ago that there was a House Bill 511 that particularly dealt with National Guard Armory. It dealt with the National Guard and rules and regulations of the National Guard and those type of things. That particular bill made it through the House and made crossover into the Senate to be considered into the Senate. What we found out, though, was 4 days ago, this bill was completely scrapped, was stripped all the way down to the bare minimums, and the bill that was shot down in the House was included and was added to this House bill that passed to be considered. And so this House Bill 511 now looks completely different than what it was. It has all these sentencing things about reducing sentences for drug dealers and all this kind of stuff in it that was pushed over, and now it's going to be considered on Monday in the Senate Rules Committee to be considered to follow through the Senate, to be presented there, to be voted on. It's now called the North Carolina First Step Act. And again, it's House Bill 511 for anybody that's listening. And one thing that says in here that's very concerning to the sheriffs, and should be concerning to citizens also, is the way the trafficking laws stand now. If you're caught with trafficking amount of drugs, and it's set up in 3 stages. It's a low level, mid level, or high level trafficking, depending on the amounts of drugs you have. With each level has mandatory prison time, mandatory sentencing, and mandatory fines. Low level, I think the minimum is like 7 years in prison and $250,000 fine, I think is what the minimum is. With it, there is no judge's discretion. If you're convicted, plead guilty, convicted of trafficking on the low level, that's what you're going to serve. You're going to go to prison for that. As the mid-grade goes up and the high level goes up, the fines go up and the time in jail goes up, the time in prison goes up. The only way, as the law stands now, that you don't have to serve time or pay the fines is judges have discretion if you do what they call substantial assistance. If you assist law enforcement on getting more drug dealers, taking higher level dealers off, things of that nature that carries bigger weight, that is more substantial in the community, it's called substantial assistance. And if you do that for law enforcement, then judges have the discretion of waiving fines, reducing fines, or reducing sentencing for that. And that's the way it's been for years. Now, I've said all that to say this. What the new House Bill 511 that it goes in that's very concerning for law enforcement is the fact that I'm just going to read this the way it is. I printed it off here. It says under this new, they're adding a new section of this that says that a fine for drug trafficking or conspiracy traffic, the ones that's talking about, that a judge may reduce the fine or impose a prison term less than the applicable minimal prison term provided by this section, or can suspend the prison term imposed and place a person on probation if the sentencing judge finds and enters in the record substantial and compelling reasons based on the nature of crime and the history and character of the defendant and the defendant's chances of rehabilitation. Our problem with that is that's ambiguous at best and leaves a whole lot of discretion to judges about whether to sentence people or not to sentence people to prison. What does it mean, finds in the record substantial and compelling reasons based on the nature of the crime? I mean, that could be anything.
Vague.
A judge may just feel good that day and say, it really wasn't that bad, so, you don't have to go to jail. The history and character of the defendant, who's to say what that means, the history and character of a defendant, that's totally subjective, to judges. It's totally subjective to how the defense attorney portrays a person, things of that nature. And chances of rehabilitation, who's to say what your chances of rehabilitation are? You may go for 2 days, you may go for 2 years, you may drop out after 3 days. How do you know what's going to happen on rehabilitation? So the problem that we have with this in law enforcement is the fact of that it's kind of broad terms, it's kind of ambiguous. One thing I do want to say about this is that from my personal standpoint, I am not opposed to rehabilitation. I am not opposed to substantial assistance. I'm not opposed to helping people who may need help. But the problem with this bill here is it doesn't target those who are addicted and need rehabilitation and needs counseling and needs help. It targets those who are putting substantial amounts of drugs on the street and are selling drugs and profiting off drugs and are ruining lives and ruining our neighborhoods and terrorizing our neighborhoods by this drug epidemic. This particular bill are helping these people get out of jail and helping these people not have to serve prison time and helping these people not have to answer for the crimes that they have done. My experience has been, I worked for many, many years as a narcotics unit, and as a drug agent and helping fight drugs and different things in our counties, not just this county, but our 5 western counties in North Carolina. And one of the things I have found is when you get in a trafficking level of drugs and you get into people trafficking in drugs, generally speaking, even though there are some that are addicts, there are some that are addicted to the drugs, the vast majority of these people who are trafficking in drugs are there for the money. They're there for the profit. They're there taking advantage of those who are on drugs, taking advantage of those who are addicted, taking advantage of those who need help. And so they're taking advantage of our communities to try to make some money and try to make a profit off that. And so because of that, I personally am opposed to high priority to this bill. And I think the Sheriff's Association has taken the stance that the association is opposed to high priority. And I know the legislative committee is opposed to high priority to this bill. And so my encouragement is one of the sponsors for this bill, from what I understand, is Senator Davis, one of our senators. And so I tried contacting Senator Davis this morning and left a message, and I also sent a message to Senator Davis about my opposition to this bill and my opposition to the language of this bill. And so if those that are listening that that corresponds back and forth with Senator Davis, I would like to ask for you this weekend, if you would, and it has to be done before Monday because it's going to be listened to in the Senate Rules Committee on Monday. When they get back to Raleigh. Over the course of the weekend, if you would, just send Senator Davis a email, stating the fact of that, that this doesn't need to go through the Senate committee and needs to be voted on. And if it is voted on, to vote no, for this entering into law. I think it would be a loophole that drug traffickers and those that are high priority in the drug world can find, defense attorneys can argue because it is so ambiguous on getting people who needs to go to prison out of going to prison and keep them from going to prison. So my argument on this is that it doesn't need to be done for those reasons. And for those that there's listening that can take a few minutes to email Senator Davis, please try to email him over the weekend and just say, please don't support this bill and to vote no to House Bill 511.
It's all in the language. It has to be clearly defined.
It does. It does. And like I say, again, for the record, I want to say I am not opposed to rehabilitation. I'm not opposed to those things. But the fact of the matter is this would create too big of an issue and too big of a loophole, in my opinion, that would allow substantial drug traffickers to get out of prison. The problem also with this is not just for future arrest, but if this passes, those that are currently in prison serving time can go back and they can file a motion for appropriate relief, and they could get out of prison. So we could actually have drug traffickers in prison today that, if this bill passes, could file a motion for appropriate relief and get out of prison on Tuesday. So we need to make sure that this is opposed, and the senators out there understand that we're opposed to it.
What I'm seeing around the world is the drug dealers that go to prison aren't learning their lesson.
Right.
They get out and they start over the same.
They learn how to be better drug dealers.
Exactly. So
I think if you want rehabilitation and all these things, make it mandatory for all this other prison term and getting rehabilitation and getting life counseling and getting those things while they're in prison to make them better citizens when they get out. And I think that would be the more appropriate thing for those that are trafficking in drugs, to handle that. If people or the senators don't like the amounts that it takes for trafficking, then I wouldn't be opposed to changing legislation that would up the amounts that qualify you for trafficking. But the problem is that that we have people I think would take real advantage of this. Defense attorneys that take real advantage of it, people in prison that would take real advantage of it, and all you would have to do is judge shop till you found a liberal judge, give them a heartfelt sob story, and they would let you out of jail. And so,
and people do that. They shop for judges, don't they?
They do. And defense attorneys know what judges are conservative, what judges are liberal, what judges hands out stiff sentences, what judges don't. And so those defense attorneys judge shop, and they will find a judge if they want their client to get out of jail on something like this. They would try to schedule that on a court date where there's a judge of their liking sitting on the bench to try that.
And that's a big problem in our legal system.
It is. It certainly is. One thing that Georgia does that I really like, and I wish North Carolina would follow suit with it, is on drug cases in Georgia. Once a judge hears the initial case, that judge follows that case all the way through. They are not brought before different judges. A judge is assigned the case. And so when you're coming to court for those and other offenses in Georgia, the judge is assigned the case. The judge handles that case from beginning to end, hears all of the motions, hears everything on that case. And so at the end of the day, when sentences is imposed and those type of things, there's not blaming other judges and pointing things that this judge did that or that judge did it, and they judge shop for this one, because he's responsible for it. He or she follows that case from beginning to end. And so
that is good.
It's something I wish North Carolina would do, to follow suit with that, to assign cases to judges. And that way they could keep better track of the way judges are ruling for our communities. And so people could know what judges to support and what judges not to support.
All right. Well, Sheriff, I see we're quite a bit over time. Any concluding thoughts?
No, just be safe this weekend. It's supposed to be hot again all weekend. Sun's going to be out. Be safe out there. Drink a lot of water. Stay hydrated. And when you're on the lakes and boating and all those kind of things, just be safe.
All right, folks. You're tuned to WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Your forecast next, brought to you by Carpet Mart.
If you're building a new home or replacing your present floors, check with Carpet Mart and